Or just put mine on a separate, add an extra slide to put the QR code. The emergency QR code.
What do I do?
If Rachel turns up, we use the QR code.
Let's see if that'll work.
At least you've got like some support.
There we go. Okay, and then just bang on that other new slide.
Yeah, combine the spare ones.
Paste. Done. It's just one big QR code right in the centre of the screen.
So, yeah.
There you go.
I mean, hopefully it'll
Done.
be. Oh. Yeah, what are the power inputs here? Is that the main one?
That's the one. That's the main feed in the audio. That's power. So it's USB-C.
fine.
You got USB-C out?
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
is that right?
We'll give it a
Oh,
try.
is it? No, maybe not.
File save.
We'll wing it. It's late.
Save.
Okay, thank you everybody. If you'd like to quickly return to your seats, we're going to move on with this afternoon's proceedings. So, and it would help if I looked at the correct page. So, this session's related to medical technology in a really broad sense, and we've got some interesting speakers, the first of which is Georgia Gay. She's the Business Development Officer for Cyberdyne Incorporated. And yes, they did take the name from the Terminator film. And you'll see the relevance of that in a minute. So I'd like to ask Georgia to join us. Thank you.
Hi, hello. Thank you for coming to listen to my talk today. And what's been really nice is actually listening to all of your talks as well and seeing that we have so much in common with regards to the people that we serve. I suppose I should probably start on my slide. And I've spoken to a few of you today asking about what I do, so I'm really sorry if you have to hear my spiel again. And unfortunately, Catherine Knighton, who's meant to be doing the next slot, who's my manager, could not come along today. So unfortunately, I have 40 minutes, which I promise I won't fill. And also with regards to, obviously, this is the slump slot. So if anybody wants to get up and have a wiggle around because they've just eaten their lunch, that's also totally fine. So first of all, who am I? So I'm Georgia, and I have the unique role of working for Hampshire County Council and also working for Cyberdyne. That probably sounds a bit strange, but my background is tech, and I've got this unique ability and unique role to come in and work with medtech in a social care setting and also in a health setting. So I'll tell you a bit more about that. And this is Catherine, who was supposed to be with me today. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it. She is the transformation lead at Hampshire County Council. She runs loads of projects, but one of the main projects that she runs is one that I'm involved with called the Cobot project. And it's as interesting as it sounds, so you get to hear a bit more about that come the end of the presentation. Cool. So who is Cyberdyne? And as Sean kindly alluded to, we are fortunately or unfortunately not the company from the Terminator, but we are equally as interesting. So we are a Japanese robotics company that were founded in 2004 by a chap called Professor Sanghai. Professor Sanghai is the guy in the middle. He's a pretty clever guy. He's not only the CEO and founder of Cyberdyne Robotics, but he's also, I've got to read it out because it always confuses me. So he has a PhD in engineering, but he's also the Executive Research Director at the Center for Cybernetics Research in Japan, as well as a whole list of other things that are on his CV. So he's a pretty clever guy. And Cyberdyne was created because I'm not sure if you guys know much about Japan, but they have quite an aging population problem. So obviously to have a growing population, you need to have a birth rate of around 2.4. Japan are on about 1.2 at the moment, and so he foresaw all of the problems that come about with regards to an aging population. And he wanted to create something so that as people got older, they could have more mobility for longer and retain quality of life. And that's when he created the HAL range. So we have Eli, my lovely assistant today. He's sporting one of our devices, and I'm sure he'll give you a little walk in a minute. This is the lower limb device. We also have two other devices. We have the HAL lumbar, and we also have the HAL single joint. Now, HAL stands for Hybrid Assisted Limb, and these devices are very, very unique. Yes, they are exoskeletons, but what makes them even more unique is how they work. So a lot of exoskeletons that you may have come across in the past utilize stimulating the muscles. What's unique about the HAL device is it actually works utilizing the wearer's intention. So, Eli, could I get you to come through to the middle of the stage? So Eli has just spent half an hour with me where I've been fitting him into the device, okay. So we've been sat around for a little bit, so one of the electrodes has come loose. But what's actually all over Eli's legs are electrodes on particular muscle groups. And that is because we utilize the wearer's intention by picking up on the wearer's bioelectrical signals. Now, bioelectrical signals are sent from the brain to muscle groups, and these signals leak onto the surface of the wearer's skin. And what we do is we can pick up even the faintest signal that comes through. So then utilizing and completing that person's intention. So if Eli was, I've turned him off because one of his electrodes has just come loose because we've been sat around for a little bit. But if Eli was to walk, the device would pick up on his intention to walk and complete that with him. So instead of just stimulating the muscles, it's helping rebuild the neurological pathways. And this device is the lower limb device. So this is probably our best and most requested device. It's used globally within rehabilitation clinics. It's also part of workers' compensation in Germany. It's part of public health service in Japan and also in Malaysia. So you can find these across the globe, and really I want to introduce it to the UK and introduce you guys to it. So it's predominantly used for patients who have had spinal cord injury, neuromuscular disorders, or stroke. And what's really cool about it is it can target, so say you have somebody who's had a stroke, it can work and just you could isolate, maybe it's the left hip and the left knee that needs work, and you could put a manual assist on one side so that the wearer can just use it as they would normally, and then it can assist them with the side of the body that needs the help. Also, we have these really fashionable shoes that come with it. They can monitor and show you the kind of center of gravity and whether you're getting heel to toe with the patient when they're walking. So, Eli, you can take a seat now if you like. And if anybody has any more questions with regards to this, then please feel free to come and ask me afterwards. So what's really cool is I've had some people ask me, well, what happens if you've got somebody with a complete spinal cord injury and they've got no signals that are able to be picked up on? And, some months ago I may have said, potentially they wouldn't be able to utilize the lower limb device within their treatment. But something that we've recently been able to do is we've had a couple of people come in with complete spinal cord injuries, And to begin with, on their first sessions, we've utilised the electrodes on the arms and got the wearer in the device and moved the arms at the same time as the legs. And then after a certain amount of treatments, we've been able to pick up signals on the legs. So, you know, that's still in its infancy, but it's something that I'm happy to share with you guys and happy to explain afterwards if you're interested. What I thought would be interesting is to actually show you a case study. So we've got Kim is somebody who I've shared on LinkedIn, so if you follow me on LinkedIn recently, you will have seen this. So she came in to us with a C5, C6 spinal cord injury. She had really, really reduced ability to use her upper half, her arms, and she couldn't use her legs at all. She was in a wheelchair. So she came in for just over a year and worked with us. And, well, let's show you the video so that you can have a look for yourself. So as you can see, this is the first session. The ability to actually lift the legs is not possible without the help of the physiotherapist. So this is after the 6th session. I'm also really pleased to report that Kim now can walk without the use of aids. It would still be for short periods of time, but she's at the point now where she doesn't need to utilize a walker or the HAL device. So this was on her last session. As you can see, her gait cycle is completely different to the first one. So with everybody who comes in for lower limb training, we always do a 10-meter walking test on the first session, and then we do it periodically throughout the training, and then we'll do it again at the end. Ooh. So now to talk to you guys about the single joint. So the single joint is exactly what it says on the tin. It is a device that also utilizes the electrodes and the wearer's intention to move. But it focuses on individual joints. And this is particularly useful if you have somebody who's not able to get out of bed and you want to start being able to work particular groups before they are able to stand. So in the EU, we currently can use the elbow, the knee, and the ankle single joint. But I've also got a really cool case study to show you what we've done with regards to our centre in Malaysia, where they've utilised the single joint on shoulders. It's not available in the EU yet, but it's really cool, so I thought I'd give you a little example of it. What's good about it is it's in a small box, so it's easy to move around, and it just allows early stages of recovery to kind of be picked up before potentially you're able to get somebody in a lower limb device. It also can focus on the ankle, and with regards to the lower limb, it doesn't have a specific part that focuses on the ankle, so you can do training with ankle work with the single joint and then move into the lower limb. So this gentleman, sorry, before I show this, I just want to give a nod. Please do not record these next ones just for, I'm allowed to share them within the room, but client confidentiality. So this gentleman had a C5 segment injury. This just shows his ability and mobility pre-single joint training. As you can see, he's got significant mobility loss in his shoulder. This is during the single joint training. So as you can see, this little monitor at the front is part of the ways in which you can monitor the signals that are being picked up, and you can change whether it's changing the sensitivity or increasing the torque tuner. You can also monitor it on a phone. A phone comes with it. So this is, again, utilizing electrodes. So he's the one who is making this device move. It's not making him move. And then this is after one session with us with the HAL single joint. So that was increased mobility after just utilising it for one session. And then finally, we'll come on to the HAL lumbar, which is my personal favourite and one that I work with every single day. And what's cool about the HAL lumbar is, as you can see from the image, it's very unique in a sense that it's not just a medical device. This is also used in industry globally. We utilise it in the UK within the care industry, but it's also used within anything that has strenuous moving and handling needs. And so in Japan, they use it with regards to building sites, manufacturing, and what's great is it can be used to rehabilitate trunk stability, or it can be used as a protective and preventative device, making sure that you're in a correct moving and handling position. So this is my favorite case study. I'm just going to give a nod. This is another one that, please do not record this. And this lady is 82, and it kind of shows to me that you can be of any age and kind of increase that mobility. She's 82, and she's in a care facility, and she's utilised the lumbar device to help with her trunk stability. So as you can see from this, she walks incredibly slowly, and she has to use a walker. Can you see that there's very, very little trunk stability there? She's really, really bent over her walker. Something that's common when regards to, I'm picturing my grandmother, for example, after having a fall and losing confidence in the walking, and then it's kind of a use it or lose it. You know, if you're not utilising that part of the body, then all of the weight's now going into her upper body. And then this is her sit to stand function. So she's unable to sit to stand unaided. So what we did is we did 10 HAL lumbar sessions with her, just simple sit to stands, and then sit and kind of hover to help rebuild her trunk stability there, and here's sit to stand motion. We did 10 of these sessions, and I'm pleased to report that this is where she's at now. She's able to stand unaided, and this is her walking function. So as you can see, her posture's completely changed. I love this because I think that by showing you this example with this patient using it in a rehab setting, you get an idea of actually what it can do in a protective and preventative way. It's really interesting. I mean, it's happy and sad. I've been at 2 events in the last 6 weeks where I've done demonstrations and got people in and out of the devices, and I've had 2 women on separate occasions who have both had back injuries, and they work within the caring sector, and they've been unable to go back to work because of so they're working but unable to do any of the normal day-to-day tasks that they would have been able to do before. And both of them came to me and cried because they had normally had so much pain just from standing still and walking upstairs. And by utilising the lumbar device, they could move around with ease. So now I'm going to move on to the part that Catherine would be doing. So I hope that I can do it some justice. So why are the cobots within Hampshire County Council? So you may have gained a bit of an understanding from what I have just explained with regards to the lumbar device, but the cobot is what we call the HAL lumbar, and we renamed it that because HAL lumbar isn't really catchy. Collaborative robot is what we call it within the UK. So, the starting point. Why did we look to bring in any kind of assistive tech within the caring industry? Now, I'm sure that everybody here is aware of the fact that we have a huge shortage of carers. In 2017, we did a study within Hampshire. By 2025, we would be at a deficit of around 6,000 carers. And there was something crazy, and that was before the pandemic. And obviously, with regards to the pandemic, that's kind of become even worse. what was scary is something came out that if every school leaver, every 16-year-old when they came to leave school that year, if they all decided to go into the care industry, we would still have a deficit of carers. So we needed to find a reason why people are leaving the industry, and find a way in which we can support our carers. So one of the things that came back was a lot of people were leaving the care industry due to musculoskeletal injury, and they were getting to a certain age and they just couldn't do the physical manual labour tasks, especially if they'd received an injury from elsewhere. So it was cutting their careers short. So we wanted to look, as well as looking into other methods, we wanted to look at a way where we could support them and protect them, and help retain staff at the same time. So instead of me rabbiting on, I'm going to play you a video now, which is fine for you to record if you like. And this is kind of what we've been through recently. So. One of the things that's interesting, and I'm not sure if I said just now, is we actually utilize the lumbar device, the cobot, without the use of electrodes. So it has a manual assist mode, it has a user assist mode, and then you can actually use a combination of both. Obviously, we utilize the electrodes when working with those with weaker trunk stability who are in rehabilitation, but we found it's not necessarily ideal to be putting electrodes on carers. There was a few pushbacks with regards to fake tan and electrodes and that kind of thing. So there's a solution for that. But yeah, in 2017, we saw that there was this problem. We had a company called PA Consulting who works with us with our assisted tech within adult social care. And so they went out, searched around, and Cyberdyne came up with the How lumbar device, because How lumbar device is used in the care industry in other countries. And so we thought we'd give it a go. So in 2018, we secured an LGA funding with the Isle of Wight to explore the kind of perceptions of the cobot as a potential solution. And phase 1 was UK paid care sector, and phase 2 was kind of user requirements, strategic outlines of case and regulatory requirements, and doing all the paperwork. And then by 2019, we kind of scoped a Pathfinder, which began in January 2020, which is obviously not a great time to be doing an assistive tech Pathfinder, obviously because later in the year we came up with other challenges, for example, COVID-19. But what was interesting, actually, there was a benefit to it, because what we found with regard to utilising the lumbar device is that people were able to give care, especially if you've got a care package that's like 1.5 people really, so you have to put 2 carers on each package. You could narrow that down to 1 person because of the use of the cobot. So yeah, it was kind of a bit of a shift of plans, but it actually worked out as a cost-saving exercise and also as a protective and preventative exercise. So we concluded in our 6-month Pathfinder and decided that we had enough evidence to kind of continue the journey a bit longer. So we went out to tender and began our contract with Cyberdyne in October 2021. So here's some feedback that we've actually got directly from the carers, and I think it's important to add this. So I guess the big question is, did the cobots work? The majority reported that service user reactions to the cobot were positive. Care workers in the community, especially domiciliary care and reablement, were particularly positive and enthusiastic, and when given the opportunity to try the new technology. And these care workers found that the cobot was mostly beneficial. Now, that doesn't mean that we haven't had challenges. One of the biggest challenges for us has been a cultural shift. There's a lot of people who see the cobot as, is this going to come in and take our jobs? There's also the idea of actually physically putting on a piece of tech to go to work. And so it's kind of changing those ideologies and working with carers to feel more secure within their roles and show them that this is a protective device to use to actually support them. So how does this help with our wicked problem? So the problem, if the problem was simple, we would have solved it already. And if one device was going to come in and solve the whole problem for you know, the deficit of carers that we have and reducing carers on care packages and things like that, then we would have done this long ago. But it is a tool in our tool belt with regards to reducing the amount of carers that were required on packages and also protecting those carers and keeping them in the industry for longer. So the interest and emphasis around the work has allowed us to kind of kickstart a real cultural change within Hampshire. We've built up some amazing networks across our care providers and partners in health as well. And we've started action around actually updating our moving and handling techniques. So we're now kind of unifying and bringing together one kind of training with regards to moving and handling. And we've started talking to lots of different councils with regards to this. So we have reduced the number of carers on packages. So it's 250,000 so far, but there's more to come. We've had carers tell us that the cobots have made such a difference in their physical well-being. So there's a lot of learning around introducing and embedding new technologies and those ways of working. So it's kind of become even more evident that there's a lot of myth busting that needs to happen and a lot of upskilling that needs to happen around moving and handling generally. So what's next? So it's actually a really exciting time with regards to all of these devices. This year has been about spreading the word, actually introducing people and giving demonstrations, getting people hands-on with the devices. So cobots will continue to play a vital role as part of our practice. And we also have a collaboration with Southampton University where we've got a PhD student that's funded that's actually studying the impact of the cobots within the care industry. So we're getting some real life outcomes and been able to kind of quantify the feedback that we're getting and the research that we're doing. And we're also talking to various other universities with regards to to these products. And something else that's potentially on the horizon is the use of these devices in rehabilitation. So for me, this is also very keen because I went over recently to Dublin and worked with a rehabilitation centre out there just as a trial couple of days, and was hands-on with clients using it in a rehabilitation setting, and just physically seeing the outcomes in front of my eyes, that we're now looking at different ways in which we can provide the lumbar device. So some of that might be private rental and use of training up physios that go and see individuals, or it might be as part of hospitals and things like that. We've also been invited to hospitals like the University Hospital of Southampton, and done demonstrations there, and they're potentially looking at it for their nurses or surgeons or anybody who's either stood up for long periods of time or doing excessive moving and handling. So it's really exciting. And obviously, you guys might have a lot of questions with regards to these devices, so please come and find me at any point to ask away. And hopefully, you're all still awake.
Okay, thank you, Georgia. Thank you, Eli. I've got some WD-40 in the car if you... Okay, right. I'd like to welcome up our next speaker, Professor Peter Kennedy, consultant orthopedic surgeon from Hywel University Health Board. Peter's going to talk robots again, but in a completely different application now.
Thanks, Sean. Thank you, Sean, and thank you for the introduction. So we're going from cobots to surgical robots. So that's my title, The Role of Robotics and Prince Philip Hospital in the Delivery of Joint Replacement Surgery. I've got some conflict of interest, but nobody else shows them, so I'll just hide them as well. So I'm originally from Belgium, and in Belgium there is a very, very good reporter. He's called Tintin, and he's very investigative. I love a bit of metalwork. I like to take my team to strange places to learn how to do things. I do a bit of sailing, and I love a powder day. So that's me. So what are we going to talk about? So we're going to talk about joint replacements, the outcomes, new technology in robotics and races. And as Chris has said, and I'm going to go one slide back. No, I'm going to go one slide forward. We need to have a little bit of a history lesson. So the history in joint replacement is quite important. And when John Charney developed his total hip replacement, which what he called the low friction arthroplasty, he did it with one priority, and the priority was making the patients better, making them more mobile, getting them out of bed and getting them walking and working and enjoying a good life. And his compatriot, John Insall, he was from the UK but moved to New York. He also developed Insall-Bernstein knee. So both implants are not existing anymore, but they're the predecessors of the current implants. So when I did my thesis in Sweden, we looked at the pathway for patients, and you can see the old lady, Mivanwi, going in for hospital. And if she's lucky, she'll have one hip replacement, but we saw that quite a lot of patients will have revisions, and many, many patients will have a second operation. And usually for everybody, it ends badly. But what we do in the meantime is we provide them with a new life. So why do we replace joints? So first of all, we replace joints to relieve pain, to aid in regaining mobility and quality of life, and to add a full life in the old age. So keep people active, keep people independent. So I'm not sure whether the video will be working, but so what is an ideal total joint replacement operation goes like? No, not working? All right. So what this video shows, or should have shown, is that the operation takes place, and as soon as the patient wakes up, he walks out and So there's the video with the sound. So you won't see any blood, so don't worry. So I think the surgeon is happy with his work. And that is ideal, you know, this is absolutely ideal. Patient wakes up, shakes the hand of the surgeon because he's very pleased with the outcome of the surgery, of course, and walks and dances away. So that's what you really want in surgery. It's not always the case, but that's what the ideal surgery would be. We wouldn't need any beds at all, so patients would walk straight from the operating home, and there would be no bed blockers. Kier would have all these beds to put all his lung patients in, and we would be cheaper. So, but it's not all singing and dancing. The outcomes are not always as good as we hope. The expectations of the patients are getting. Now the patients want to climb Mount Everest with new joints. We know that joints live for about 25 years, but that might not be enough if you put them in at the age of 20. The demand is growing, and we're not sure whether we will cope with the demand. The training of our junior doctors and registrars is struggling a little bit, and certainly has taken a big hit when COVID hit. The accuracy of surgery is not always the case, and even in many hands, but also in my hands, when we look at a post-op X-ray, we always sometimes say we could have done a better job. And every surgeon might have an off day. And medico-legally, orthopedic surgeons are not spared from one or two complaints, especially leg length inequality, making one leg longer than the other, dislocation afterwards. And this was, well versed already in the beginning when Bill Harris, a surgeon from Mass General, wrote his book on vanishing bone. And there was two concerns that he dealt with. He was one of the inventors of the new plastic, which the original plastic was only lasting for 10 years, but now 20, 25 years is pretty common in plastics. But he wrote a book about vanishing bone and looking at how to deal with the problem of the polyethylene wear and the cement disease, but also how to deal with the problems of mortality following surgery. But how do we measure success? I think that's a very successful procedure. The panel is where it needs to be, but it took 4 hits. So I don't think that's very successful. So when we look at outcomes, we look at patient-reported outcome measures, and they've got generic and disease-specific outcomes. You've got experience, so what the patients do think about the food, whether the surgeon smiles, whether the nurses are smiling. We also have the clinician-reported outcomes, which is mortality, because some people still pass away, unfortunately, very, very minority, but also when they have to have reoperations, when they get readmitted in hospital, but also administrative measures such as length of stay. And more, there's more and more interest in value. So what is the value of the procedure, which is not really a figure, but a concept. So new technology is necessary, and we dealt with new instruments. If you look at the instruments that Insol and Charlie were using, they're certainly not the same one as we're doing now. So we use navigation, we use patient-specific instruments and robotics, but we've always been aware that there is a need for stepwise introduction of innovation in orthopedics. So we heard about innovation earlier on, we heard about vision earlier on, but if you introduce something, you need to be able to say that it's better than what's happened before. And one of my supervisors in the past, Henrik Malko, wrote quite a lot about the stepwise introduction of technology and implants. Do we need new technology? I'm going to show you x-rays. So if anybody doesn't want to see x-rays, please close your eyes. So this is a patient that came to see me with a problem of his knee. So for the non-clinicians in the room, this is an arthritic knee. But what is very important of this knee is that the alignment is not correct. So he had a fracture before. So he had a road traffic accident when he was younger, and he has got what we call a malunion. So that's the tibia, the shin bone. So normally that piece should sit completely underneath there and in line. This gentleman's problem is not the old fracture, but this problem is he's got a very arthritic knee, and he can't ride his motorcycles anymore, and his daily activity of daily living is very, very poor. So he wants something done. He's seen a couple of my colleagues before. They said we can't do anything about it. But then comes technology. And I think with technology, we're able to provide this patient a new lease of life. So show you the same pictures again. So that's when you look at it from the front. And this is the operation, which you cannot do with the traditional methods. You have to have some kind of assistive methods. And in this case, this patient was treated in Exeter by a surgeon who's quite innovative and uses the robot we're going to talk about. So same for the lateral position. And this is a perfect position for the implant. And I had an email back from this patient, and that's what he writes. So after 5 weeks, he's already very pleased with the outcome. And normal patients after knee replacement after 5 weeks don't say they're very pleased with the outcome. So stepwise introduction of technology. So and where do we come in place now. So what are the current problems in arthroplasty? First of all, dislocation, the hip popping out of joints, longevity in young patients, and patient-reported outcome measures. We know it's a very good operation, but it's not a perfect operation. We know that 90% of the people are happy, but that makes 10% of the people unhappy. In hips and knees, it's even worse. Infection and periprosthetic fracture are also problems that we encounter, but we don't think that technology will help for those, certainly not assistive technology. And knee replacement, same problems, instability, which is pretty similar to dislocation, but not really dislocating, longevity in young patients, patient-reported outcomes. We know that 80% of knee replacements are not happy, and we would like to make that figure lower. So what do registers tell us? And my background is in register research, so big data. We know that long-term outcomes data is still missing. Our NGR, which is the UK Joint Registry, there's no data on robotics as it's not part of the minimal data set, so the NGR doesn't record whether it's a robotic-assisted operation or not. The Australians, however, are a little bit more positive towards technology, and they've been embracing computer navigation robotics for quite a while. So they've been publishing on 3-year survivorship in unicompartmental knees with good results, and as well as a reduced revision rate for dislocation in total hip replacement with navigation. So navigation is one step before the robotics. So now what do they say about knee replacement? So if you look at the figure and from the back, it's very difficult to see. But what you can see is the green line is the robotic assisted, and the lower you go to the horizontal line, the better. And the higher you go, the more revisions you got. So the computer navigated non-technology assisted is slightly worse than the robotic assisted. However, because the figures are still low, it's got a trend to statistical significance, but it's not statistically significant yet. So if you then look at the total knee replacements, you can see for primary OA since 2015 is that there's also a difference in line. They're very conservative what they're saying, because in statistics, if you don't have statistical significance, you can't really say that it's better. So there is a trend, but they're on the fence and say, well, maybe we're not there yet. But if you look at the next figure, when you compare patients that are under 65 and over 65, you can really see a divergent line. So for the young patients, robotics might really work. But this is not an RCT, and the gold standard in surgery and medicine is RCTs. So we've evaluated so far using systematic reviews, learning curves, surgeon stress levels, and it all seems to be better. Surgeons are better in using robots as long as you embrace technology. We also have some studies about plans versus achieved, so what you plan prior to surgery and what you achieved after surgery. We use CT scans of all these patients, and we know that positioning is better, alignment is better, there's less impingement. We can guess the sizes correctly, so for members of your team about stock, and having a more lean theater where you don't have to open 20 trays for an operation, but instead only 4 trays. This helps. We are aware that proms are better, patients are recovering better, there's less complication adverse event. But what are we comparing in all these big studies? Are we comparing implants? Are we comparing surgeons? Are we comparing the execution of a plan? And what about the outcomes? Are we really recording the outcomes properly? So we were very lucky, thanks to the efforts of Chris and Leighton, to be considered for the robotic surgery trial in Hywel Dda. So this is the surgical team, and you can see many smiles because they're very, very pleased and very, very keen to get going. You got the robot in the background, and this is a different type of robot than the Da Vinci robot. So the surgeon is holding the control and is standing next to the patient. So we're next to the patient. So it's computer and robot assisted surgery. It's not pure robotic surgery. So when we entered the Race and E study, this is the advert from the website from Warwick. You can only see happy smiling faces, so presumably you've seen lots of happy smiling faces in previous presentations. That's what we want our patients to look at. We had our site visit on the 26th of January 2023, and we commenced very, very shortly afterwards. So we had a first learning study where we had 10 patients that were guaranteed to have the robot. And followed that, we're doing 35 patients that are be randomized. So all patients will have the same preparation. So they'll have the CT scan, they'll have the same X-rays, and they will not know whether they have got robot or not. So the only person that knows it, or the only people that know, is the surgical team, and everybody else is blinded for the outcomes. And that is really whether we can see what the outcomes will be, whether it's going to be any different. So what they're going to measure is they're going to measure in-hospital and imaging. So they're going to test again planning versus achieved. They're going to measure surgical time. They're going to measure the pain scores very early after surgery, the opioid use, because as we are aware, there's an opioid problem. A bit more in the States than here, but we still use quite a bit of opioids following surgery, need for transfusion, time to discharge. But also what is very important is what are the patient-reported outcomes. You know, what does the patient think of the surgery? And we traditionally do Oxford hip scores and Oxford knee scores, but we feel this might be a ceiling effect. So there's a new score that's now been tested and validated, which is called the forgotten joint score. So if you forget that you have got an artificial joint, that's a great sign. So you want to live a normal life and really don't think that you've got an artificial joint in there. So all these smaller figures which you can't see from the back, these are all the secondary outcomes. But there's also a raise the hip study. And we had a raise the hip study, and these are the slides they sent me yesterday, so I had to put them in yesterday. But we're not the Golden Jubilee Hospital. I would have loved to be there, but I'm not here. I'm in Prince Philip. So Golden Jubilee Hospital is doing 3,500 joints a year. We used to do about 1,000 a year, but since COVID, we're doing about 300 a year. So for a high-volume hip surgeon, it's very painful to see how the decline of the service. But we're going to get better again, so we're positive. So what the raise the hip study does, it's once again, we're looking at PROMS, forgotten joint score, is once again the new score that we're doing, but also we got secondary outcomes. The team is still very, very keen. The patients are very keen to be registered. We're very proud to be part of the research group. Because the choice was between Cardiff and ourselves, and I'm not sure whether there's any Cardiff representatives here, but you know, having the upper hand over Cardiff always feels good for a little town like Llanelli. So why did we get the luck of getting involved in the study in Prince Philip Hospital, and PPH's Prince Philip Hospital, or as some other people, Prince Peter's Hospital, but that's not true. So I think what they were looking for is the real-world experience. So we've been hearing about real-world experience before. You know, not everybody is a Cardiff Hospital or a Stanmore Hospital or a Golden Jubilee Hospital where you do high volume. So yes, I'm a high-volume surgeon, but I'm in a relatively low-volume unit, so it's a real-world experience. So if it works for a unit like ourselves, it certainly will work in the rest of the world. There was previous great experience of the research team with the R&D team and involvement. We got the NGR legacy, so we've always been earning golden stars in the NGR for our good quality work, not only with data collection but also with the results. And there was a great understanding between the sponsor team, which I don't tell you in a secret, is Stryker, and the team at AGD, so the theater team. You know, we had good cooperation, the surgical teams, my colleagues and myself. There's a strong MDT with the wards, the physiotherapist, and also the team at TriTech and R&D made them feel very, very comfortable with the speed of the paperwork and you know how we got things done. And really a very big thank you for Chris, because originally we weren't allowed to start because of a financial problem within the health board, but renegotiating it made it work. And as you've seen on the picture, the eagerness of the team to make it a success has really been a big drive. So in conclusion, the orthopedic team in Prince Philip is a part of a national multi-center blind RCT, comparing surgeon versus surgeon and machine. So, you know, you've got the surgeon and machine, and that's why I tell my patients, you know, the operation will not be done by the robot by itself. It's still me controlling the robot. The raise and knee replacement is well in the way. The hip replacement, the first hip replacement will start on the 13th of November. The patient's fully aware of that, so he will be the first patient. The experience of the patients, the staff on the ward, staff in theater, the R&D team and trial team is great. You know, they're really very keen on taking part in this study. And a real-world experience encompassing value, because, you know, value, getting the patient central in the outcomes of the study is really good, and seeing whether it will deliver value for the NHS. Other outcomes of interest, and I think that's the way forward. You know, I've been mainly a quantitative researcher so far, but I think doing some qualitative study on this and looking at patient experience, not only PROMs, but patient experience, but also staff experience, and looking at the broader picture, what it feeds back to the team, I think is very important. And this is my last slide. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope I didn't disturb you too much with the x-rays.
Sorry, need me specs. Thank you, Peter. Right, our next speaker is Dr. Daniel Harris. He's the lead pharmacist for cardiac services in Hywel University Health Board. I was panicking and yeah, so stage is yours.
Thanks, John and Chris, for inviting me along. Let me just see if this works. That way. Yeah, thank you. So, I think quite a few of the speakers today have given a bit of a flavour for current stresses within healthcare and sort of the picture for the future. We've got aging population, inevitably growing proportion of that population with risk factors requiring work, whether it's orthopedic work or cardiovascular work we come into. And it's certainly fairly evident from the population around us that we've got a population with high amount of cardiovascular disease and an even greater proportion of the population with risk factors that are going to lead into cardiovascular disease in the future. And that's a problem for us. Fortunately, I think in cardiology, we've got a very good evidence base, and it's not really a case of figuring out what we should do for people. We know what to do. It's really a case of how do you deliver care to such a large proportion of the population. So this project I'm going to present on is really about firstly describing the population with cardiovascular disease, so not just coronary artery but stroke and peripheral vascular disease as well, and then identifying sort of opportunities to improve the outlook. So what proportion of this population is not receiving optimal evidence-based medication, and then figuring out and evaluating the service to deliver that care to them. So this is a project's partnership between Hywel Health Board, Swansea Bay and Swansea University. It's sponsored by Amgen, which is a biotech company brass plated in California, and we received unrestricted educational grant for this work. We're very grateful for. Amgen very much take a sort of arm length approach to this and don't get involved in sort of the day-to-day data collection and sort of logistics of the project. They're an arm length sponsor. So why are we doing this? Well, we know atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease is the main cause of death across the world, particularly in Wales. And the most effective way of preventing cardiovascular disease and death from cardiovascular disease is providing evidence-based treatments for lipid management and hypertension. This first sentence, it doesn't say a lot really about the standard of health within a nation. If you look at UK, we have, it's number one killer in the UK. It's also number one killer in sort of developing nations as well. And I guess maybe the aim of a good healthcare and a good sort of health across a society is maybe to be realistic, that you're not going to prevent it in everyone, but hopefully you can push it to as far along in someone's lifetime that you develop it at your natural expiry, so you're not living with multiple diseases at a given time and living quite miserably very often. So I guess maybe the goal of our healthcare system should be to sort of push this down the line, rather than, it's nice to keep people alive with it, but it's better to sort of keep people living longer out of our healthcare system. And inevitably the best way to do this for this patient group is lipid management, blood pressure management. Maybe that didn't quite answer why we're doing this project. This is a study from our colleagues at Swansea University, and they looked at population that high risk of developing cardiovascular disease or haven't had it yet, and they risk stratified patient groups. So on the left-hand side, it's high-risk patients receiving lipid-lowering therapy. On the right-hand side, it's very high-risk patients receiving lipid-lowering therapy. And what you see is that the high-risk group, I think it's around about 2/3 of uncontrolled lipid levels. In the very high group, even a greater proportion of uncontrolled lipid levels. Maybe this paints a slightly better picture. This is a study we published a couple of years back. We created a national cohort of patients that had coronary artery stenting. So a contemporary group of people presented to NHS hospitals. 95–98% presented with a heart attack. The remaining were sort of elective patients undergoing coronary artery stenting. Once you had the stent put in, the key thing is you take antiplatelet therapy, stops the stent blocking up. After that, it's all about risk factor management, and lipid management is a fairly simple thing to do. What was interesting in this group of about 25,000 patients, a third of this group didn't even have a lipid level taken in the year following the stenting procedure. So we spend an awful lot of time, rightly so, developing techniques to put stents in people, and then sort of miss the opportunity to keep this group of people out of the hospital in the future. So a third had no lipid test taken in the year following stenting. Of those who did have a lipid test, less than half met the previous ESC standard lipid levels, 1.8 millimoles of LDL cholesterol. Less than a quarter met the updated guideline standard. And when you look at people so below the threshold and above the threshold, you see that this higher risk group here are receiving less intensive therapy and more likely not to be receiving therapy than the other groups. I think this is kind of selling to us that there's a gap in the provision of very quite simple, highly effective, cheap drug treatment that keeps people out of hospital and living for longer. So that tells us a little bit about why we're doing this project. So there's two elements to this. One is at the population level, so it's using the SAIL data bank to describe the prevalence of atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease in our population and describing the proportion of people who are going to go on to develop this, so a high-risk primary prevention group, and then evaluating how we're managing this group optimally and what is the opportunity to do things better for this group of people. I suspect many of you know what the SAIL data bank is. It's housed in Swansea University, and I guess it harvests patient data, anonymous patient data from our primary care system. So if you see a GP, it documents why you were there, diagnosis made, medications, tests requested, and so on. And it also does this for people entering hospital as well, so we can see the other element. So when they come in, how long they're in, diagnoses made, and so on. And then it also, any interaction with the government body, whether it's an education system, social care system, prison system, we have that information together. Now, there's lots of places that have this kind of data. Many data banks have much larger data sets, or much more, much greater population than Wales does. But the real beauty of SAIL is that you're able to match people up through different data sets. So you can see management in primary care, hospitalizations, they sort of socio-demographics and ethnicity, where they live, even if they have a gas boiler in their house or oil central heating, the languages they speak, and so on. So it gives us a much greater granularity of information to conduct this research in. I think this is really important because when we took on this project, there's tons of information, or you'd think there'd be lots of information out there saying what the picture of cardiovascular disease is like. It's actually not a lot of contemporary data that's of use. A lot of it is conducted from systems where they only have access to components of the overall picture, so maybe just primary care data or just secondary care data. So you can never really stitch together what it is we're doing and the scale of the problem quite like we can do in SAIL. So that's the first part of the project. I guess my colleague refers to this as stamp collecting, and you can do these projects all the time and get them published. But I think it's the second element of this we call sort of posting the letter, is where you describe the problem and then try to find a solution to it, or at least know what doesn't work as a solution. And this is undertaken, so the second part is at a practice level. It's undertaking or delivering a pharmacist-delivered MDT-supported cardiovascular risk optimization clinic that focuses on lipid management and blood pressure management. And at the end of this, we'll evaluate sort of the efficacy and feasibility of delivering this approach, and at least have a slightly better understanding at the end of it, whether a system like this works to solve some of the problems we identify in the stamp collecting exercise. Oops. This probably doesn't quite describe the complexity of the team and how we brought this about together. So maybe it's just start with the university team at Sale Data Bank. We've got a team, clinical academics, myself, and some cardiologists from Swansea and our health boards, team of data scientists, really high-level statisticians and project managers that can make this work for us. And I think the key thing is here, data science is a bit like the emperor's new clothes. There's lots of people that kind of selling this idea, but you really need to have a team of people that know what the clinical questions are that to be answered, and a team of data scientists that can deliver this and bring everyone together. Otherwise, it's easy to get data out of these systems, and if it not to be that meaningful, we've got a very good track record in delivering these projects. So this is the team from Swansea, and then I guess we've got a team then from across two health boards. And a colleague before, I think, alluded to the fact that there's quite a lot of competition between neighbouring health boards, and while everyone thinks they work together, the reality of it, especially those working in academia, you often don't like people in the department next door to you, let alone in another institute. So it's really, I think it's quite a tribute to people who brought this project together. We've been able to stitch two health boards that inevitably often competed for the same resource and the same staff and a university together, and got funding from a sort of international pharma or biotech company to do this. And this is just, I think, a small picture of that overall team. A friend of mine, close friend of mine, asked, why did Amgen come here? They could have gone to MIT, Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge, London. And maybe there is something in the infrastructure that we've got, unified health boards, linked data, organizations that are willing to work together to bring this to fruition. So phase one, the gap analysis. So as I said, we've got the Save Data Bank. It's got all hospitalisation records going back to about 2020, and it has about 90% of primary care data. And the aim of this project is to identify those with atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease and those at risk of developing it, and also plotting that trend line over time to see, I think it's quite important for us to see what has changed in healthcare over 20 years and how that picture is continuing to change, particularly if we want to do some future modelling. Then asking questions within this group: are they receiving the appropriate preventative medication? Are their risk factors controlled? And where the risk factors are not controlled, are they receiving suboptimal treatment? So that's our gap and opportunity to improve things. And then maybe validating a novel sort of risk factor tool for identifying high-risk patients. There's lots of these out there, and inevitably what they tell you that old people with lots of other comorbidities, particularly diabetes, particularly people who are overweight, go on to have further events. You don't need us to tell you that. But I think what we ought to be thinking about is developing a prediction tool that tells us who the patients are that may benefit most for more optimal, aggressive pharmaceutical management. And then the phase two, the population gap closure. So this is evaluating, it's one pathway across 3 different models of care across the 2 health boards. And the first part of that is, can we identify people who need our treatment? And that is, you'd think would be easy, but it's a little bit more difficult than we initially thought, but we're getting around that. Then once they identify and come into our service, reviewing the risk factor control, It's not just for hypertension and dyslipidemia, but weight management and various other glycemic control and so on. Optimizing the treatment according to our standards of care, so NICE and ESC guideline recommended care. There's nothing experimental here. We're just implementing what should be standard of care. And at the end of it, and the other key point to make is evaluating the accuracy and efficacy of near-patient lipid kits. That's quite valuable for us, that if you review a patient and they've got high-risk factors for cardiovascular disease, you then got to send them away to have a blood test. That takes a ridiculous amount of time and effort, and then you've got to bring them back into clinic. So actually, if you can figure out what their lipids are like from a finger prick test, then kind of eliminates another 2 steps in sending someone away for a blood test and bringing them back again for further review, particularly when one of the resources we're very low on is personnel to deliver these programs. And then sort of at the end of this, evaluating and getting patient feedback from PROMS and PREMS data, and evaluating the health economics of it and the efficacy and feasibility of delivering this service across different settings. Now, in terms of, I said, is one treatment pathway across 3 different settings. So the treatment pathway, so patients brought in baseline to sort of basic recording of the clinical risk factors and blood taking, collecting of PROMs, an evaluation then of whether they should have additional treatment, inevitably probably prescribing some additional treatment or recommending some lifestyle changes, and bringing them back after 2 to 3 months to evaluate response to treatment, side effects, and where we go to next. And then the program allows us to have sort of multiple repeat follow-ups with these patients, and the telephone consultations in between with the nursing staff involved. I think from the about 30 or so patients we've got through this so far, most are requiring probably 2 to 3 appointments. There's a handful that are much more difficult to manage, intolerant to many of the medications we try, and we're probably going to have to bring them back a few more times. So that's the pathway. And I said it's one pathway in 3 different settings across 2 health boards. So there's 75 patients recruited from Swansea, 75 from Howell Dda. Patients recruited from Swansea we see in either in Singleton and an outpatient setting, or in some of the local GP services in its vicinity. And then 50 patients in a primary care hub in Howell Dda, out in Ceredigion, and then 50 patients split, so 25 in a GP practice locally, 25 in Howell Dda. So that's the pathway. Expected outcomes. So I think from the population level data, it's really important for us to know how many people are out there with atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, as a coronary artery disease, stroke and peripheral vascular disease, or multivascular disease, and then what proportion of that group are suboptimally managed. And then I guess it's understanding what that gap looks like, how much you can close that therapeutic gap, and what that would mean for life expectancy, life saved, reduced admissions to hospital, and so on. And then from the clinical pathway evaluation, it's understanding, I guess, the logistics and the feasibility of delivering this care pathway in different clinical settings, and understanding, the differences maybe between sort of delivering care in very urban settings, like where we currently are, to very rural settings out in Howell Dda. And then gathering patient feedback, preferences from the staff involved in it, and the GPs prescribing referring these patients into the pathway, and putting together an evaluation of these 2 aspects of the project. Progress. So on the data side of things, we've already got a first manuscript for review. It's documenting, I guess, the time trends in presentation of atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease from 2010 up to current date, bridging the pandemic, so we're able to have a little bit more insight into how the pandemic has impacted diagnosis and treatment, and implications for the future, and how we've sort of delivered risk factor management across this period through sort of multiple guideline updates and, I guess, the development of treatments and so on, and we can evaluate where we are against a gold standard of care, I guess. Primary prevention gap analysis is underway, so we're now looking at those who are high risk of going on to develop disease, particularly diabetics who are very high risk of developing disease, and again evaluating whether they've been treated according to the guideline standards. We've got patients up and running, enrolled in Swansea. We've got some going through right to the final stages. And we've got recruitment set up in Howard Dar, so I think probably by the end of November, we're about 50 to 60% way through our recruitment plan. So it's going to plan. Next steps. I think part of the reason for doing this is to maybe lead to a sort of pragmatic randomized control study, so we can upscale this service into a wider population and provide a stronger evaluation of it. But even without that, what the plan is, I think, is to have the real world data, the population data that describes the problem, and a service evaluation that will hopefully go some way in addressing the best ways of delivering care, and that we can take to the executives within the health board, policymakers in government, and so on, to lobby and say this is the scale of the problem, but we're also providing potentially some of the solutions to it as well. I think that's my last slide. So, any questions? John?
Go up next here. Thank you, Dan. Our final presenter for this afternoon's session is Professor Keir Lewis. He's Medical Director of Respiratory Innovation Wales and Clinical Lead for Respiratory Medicine and the TriTech Institute at Howard Dar University Health Board. I've been really impressed with the timekeeping of you clinicians. On point.
So no pressure then, Sean. Okay, thank you very much. And forgive my voice. This isn't a smoker's voice. It's man laryngitis, I promise you. So I'm going to talk about telemonitoring for chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. This is a lung disease that disables and kills people. It's mainly related to smoking. It can cause a lot of disability. It's one of the main reasons why the ambulances are queuing up outside Morriston and Prince Philip every winter. So it causes a lot of devastation. Can we do something remotely using different and modern technology to help people stay at home for longer and to live a healthier life? These are my disclosures, and I'll spend more than a few seconds, so please welcome to read them. And I really want to tell you a story. So I'm going to tell you my personal story about how I've got interested in telemonitoring, the past, talk about what we're doing now, and actually some really interesting future studies that are being planned. And you can see how long ago this was. This was one of my original slides. You can see from the monitor and the hairstyle, this goes right back to the 2000s. And this is where we started with a better breathing project funded by Europe when we were members of the EU. And this was a randomized control trial looking at something called Doppler monitors in people's houses. It doesn't project well, but on each of those monitors, you can see oxygen levels at the top from day to day, and you can see questions on green, orange, or amber. Do you feel better, worse, or the same? And these people completed this every day, and the idea was, if someone deteriorates at home, can we pick it up early? And can we treat it before it becomes a full-blown attack that needs admission to hospital? It was a small randomized controlled trial with full ethics. And I'll just show you some themes that are going to come again and again, and what I've tried to learn to make things better as we move along. So one of the first theme, number one, they were 40 stable patients. For proof of concept, you need to get patients who are stable and keen in the beginning just to see if they can use the kit. Don't pick people who are really unstable and got a lot else going on in their lives. They'd all had something called pulmonary rehabilitations. They were highly educated, highly motivated patients. Finding number one, which is a theme again and again, the telemonitoring was really well used. We put this piece of kit in the house, and 96% of people used it. And that compares with about 35% of people who use asthma inhalers, or 40% of people use inhalers for COPD. So less than 1 in 3, 1 in 4 normally use inhalers, but 96% were using these monitors. This is remarkable. We did statistically reduce GP visits. They went to see their GP less when they were on the monitoring system, possibly because they thought someone was watching them at some point. And they went to see the GP less for other conditions, or less ingrown toenails, less diabetes, whatever it was. It wasn't just respiratory, which was interesting behavior. No difference in hospital bed days. Okay? Theme, an important theme that comes again and again. No change in quality of life. They were just as happy or just as miserable anyway. But monitoring someone, will it make them feel happy or better? But we have to do these, what Peter calls prems and proms. But we learned a lot about patient selection and early infrastructure. And the theme is not just the patients and technology, it's your infrastructure. What Darren was saying about the infrastructure of the hospitals and the practices. That's where technology falls down in the NHS, as we mentioned last year, is the NHS infrastructure. Then we got quite confident and cocky, and we thought we were going to do a large randomized control trial funded by Carmarthenshire County Council, Dockerbo, and another company called Tunstall. And it was a complete and utter disaster for various reasons. 120 people were supposed to be randomized. We stopped at about 30 patients for various reasons. Then we were given a lot of money with a few other countries, and we were the lead looking at chronic conditions. Can telehealth work across not just health boards, not just trusts, not just UK, but can it work across Europe? And this was a 21 million euro grant. And Hywel led on the COPD arm, but we also looked at diabetes. So we led 5 countries. You can see some of these countries in a minute. It was Scotland, Galicia, Spain, Norway, southern Norway, Belgium, Germany, and Wales. Here, when people were admitted to hospital and they were sick and they were scared and they had low oxygen levels, we decided we'd try to randomize them into research. And they'll agree anything when they're in hospital. That's one thing I've learned. And as soon as they leave hospital, they think they've had enough and they don't want to know you. So again, nugget number 2, if you've got really unstable patients, you've got to really bond with them at that time. And the only place we found it was feasible, and this was using special criteria that were predetermined, was in Galicia, in Spain. Surprisingly, because they had the telemonitoring system already there. The infrastructure was there. Possibly worked in Germany, and I thought, well, Germany had to recruit 40 patients, and they recruited 40 patients in a week. I thought, that's amazing. That's ruthless German efficiency at its best. I thought, how could they do that? And then we went back and looked at the data, and they recruited in their patients from a nursing home. So I'm thinking, hang on, you're telemonitoring people to look at their OBS and their SATs when there's nurses in the nursing home doing it by the bedside anyway, being sent to the nurses who are free-fit away. Not a lot of good evidence for doing that, really, but they recruited very well. So you want to recruit them, and this was United for Health, and please look at this. This helped warn European policy and Department of Health policy that if you're going to use telemonitoring, be very careful. And I thought, that's it. I'm going to do no more now. I've had enough. I'm going to quit while I'm behind. And if you look at the evidence base in clinical journals for telemonitoring, this is a very famous pyramid, a value-based pyramid is called. So the most cost-effective thing for COPD is still the flu jab at the bottom. So the GP's £1,000 per quality adjusted life year. It's really effective and it's really cheap. Second best thing you can do is tell them to stop smoking. Third thing is pulmonary rehabilitation. And then you've got all the drugs. And the most expensive thing at the top was telehealth. Up to £40,000 to £180,000 per quality life year, QALY. Then all the meta-analyses have come out now with the randomized trials. They all say it's popular, patients love it. They all say it's really well used, 96% of people use it, really good. Possibly improves quality of life, not really reduces emergency visits, possibly it doesn't reduce bed days, and there's no consistent effect on exacerbations and no effect on days in hospital. And you think, so if we do monitor it, we're not making any impact. If you're going to have an exacerbation or pneumonia, you're going to have it whether you're on a monitor or not. If you treat it earlier, does it make a difference if you haven't got very good treatments? And that was a theme that we found on 3 different projects. And it's interesting that the meta-analysis has come through again and again. Those are the themes. So I thought, okay, let's go back and do something else instead for 10 years. But, and this is a but, technology is changing anyway. It's happening all around us. Whereas people are using exoskeletons to walk, where there's new implants, it's changing. Patients are becoming more tech savvy all the time. They are far more tech savvy than we give them credit, and more tech savvy than me. Digitalization of care is happening. It's happening whether we're part of it or not. It's happening. All our records are going to be digitalized in my lifetime, I hope. And also, those of us who are on the front door, we know our traditional systems are breaking. What we're doing now in the NHS is not working. We know it's not a nice place to live and work, and it's getting worse. So why keep doing the same things? Let's change our ideas. And particularly with telemonitoring and technology, I've learned in different technologies, I don't think randomized control trials are the right answer for these kind of technologies. Can anyone think why RCTs are no good for technology? Any ideas? So time taken, Peter said. So by the time you do a randomized trial, that technology's moved on anyway. An RCT will take 5 or 6 years to come back. Your mobile phones will change every month. So we'll be doing randomized trials on an iPhone 6 at this point, knowing we're now on iPhone 15. So the technology's moved on. One of the other things with randomized control trials is they're pure in their selection. So they're good for looking at something called efficacy. But in the big respiratory trials, we've gone back, and these are mega-breaking respiratory trials, for example, in COPD, only 5% of our patients were eligible for the top COPD trials in the world. 95% of our daily patients were excluded because of other illnesses. And then we apply that then to everyday life. It's wrong. So we need to start thinking about real-world studies, like Peter was saying, in the dirty real world, small places outside the Golden Triangle, and think differently. And then, of course, COVID came along, so we had to go virtual whatever we did. And telemonitoring and telecommunications started to take off big style. So I'm just going to present some of the present, just what happens at what we do in a moment. This is a company we've been working with called Nouveau Air. And on this one, our nurses just refer, and the company, a digital coach, contacts the patients and teaches the patients online and through the phone and through their grandchildren how to put the technology on their phone. They monitor themselves. They do not ask the nurses to monitor. The NHS does not own the data. Okay? The patients own the data, and they send alerts. If you've got certain things happening, the company sends an email to the respiratory nurses. The nurses don't have to look at the data every day. And we can do things like blow-in tests at home. So we connect a little peripheral to a mobile phone, and it goes straight to the phone, up into the cloud, and we can look at it in the cloud. And that's a breaking concept. It doesn't go into NHS terminals. We don't need IT, IG governance issues to own the data. It goes into the cloud, and it can be mapped and analyzed directly from the cloud. The other thing we've done differently is we have a clinical meeting every 2 weeks. We have half an hour where the company and my respiratory nurses and the team, we have a 10-minute, 25-minute chat before I go to clinic, and we look at recruitment and retention, and any particular patients are doing dodgy things with their monitors that they shouldn't be doing, we keep an eye on them. And that regular touch point, less than 20 minutes, drives the project, drives the communication. And that was a real golden nugget, I find, that anyone, when you commission a service and a company says, here's the monitors, off you go away and do it. And we don't hear from them again until the next bill is due. It's that ongoing relationship that deals with real problems in the real world, I think, has helped us. So this is a bit out of date. Of the first 65 people onboarded, 80% love it, and I want to keep using it. And these are, on average, 69 years old people. And they like it, and they can use it. 71% are using it for more than each day for the last year. So that's massive adherence. And weirdly, they're doing spirometry, which is a blow-in test in their phone every week. And those of you who know anything about lung function, that's when you have to blow into a machine, because we can't do spirometry in primary care anymore because it's COVID. No one's been trained how to do it, or they've forgotten they don't want to do it. We've just gone back to the patient and said, why don't you do it for your phone and send us the results? Bypass primary care, bypass secondary care, and just go straight to us. Can patients do it? Yes, they bloody could. This is amazing. So 80% of patient spirometry was grade A to C in the international standard guidelines. They were hitting the right level That compares with 37% good quality spirometry in primary care. So patients being coached could do it better than doctors and nurses coaching them. This is a spirometry. So I was amazed by that. I didn't think that could happen, but it can be through the phone in their own house. And the other thing is, when someone comes to hospital for a lung test, they're running around for, or being wheeled around in a wheelchair for 30 minutes trying to find a parking space. Then they can't find a parking space. Then they're being panicked. Then they walked into outpatients. There's 30 people there. You go, and then wait, do a lung function. Back to see the doctor. Oh my God, there's a doctor. And weirdly, their lung function's all abnormal because they're still hyperventilating. But doing it in their own home, in the afternoon, in the morning, when you're relaxed and you've been coached, far more reliable, far more predictable, and we can pick up changes, not just when there's no car parking, but when things really are going wrong. So we found, again, only 4 months monitoring, no differences in emergency attendances, no differences in days in hospital. But what would you expect in 4 months? But a massive reduction for the first time in nurse home visits. We've only got about 3 nurses left. The others are all off sick with bad backs because they haven't been wearing the exoskeletons. But the ones who are left, only 3 of them left, how can we make them work more efficiently and feel needed? So you're not driving halfway up Ammanford one morning and then across to Trimsaren and then to Ceredigion and then back. They can do 20, 30 patients in an hour through a phone and only see the 1 out of 30 that's deteriorating. So they're working more efficiently and there's massive reduction in visits and they're learning to trust the technology, and then by touching base with people like me once every 2 weeks, they can bring problems to me direct. No difference in quality of life. This is a bizarre one. So people with lung function was only 30% of their lungs are working on average. They took on average a median of 2,000 steps a day. I thought, what, these people who were on oxygen, 2,000 steps a day? I was amazed by that. I'd be quite chuffed if I had 2,000 steps on my average day in work. Either that or they tied it to their dog. So they got sensors working. And I think that's a really interesting patient-reported outcome. Not how breathless you're feeling, how many days, how many steps. It's quite objective data. And some of them, on the sheer right of the graph, we had about 5 patients doing 10,000 plus steps a day, with lung volumes of 30% of what it should be for their height and age, who are officially breathless, disabled people. So I'm learning that how far you walk has got nothing to do with how breathless you feel or how much lung function you're measuring. But that'll be a great outcome for drug trials. Can your new drug make someone walk more than 4,000 steps per day? That means more to a patient than their lung function test, doesn't it? And we can measure this with technology now in their own beds, in their own houses, in their own streets, in their own shops, in the cigarette shop, in the vaping shop. We can do it. This is a little bit of humble pie in public, and I'm proud to do it. And this is someone whose lung function at the top was deteriorating. So this is the top, just one way, but the top 3 lines measure how good their lungs are on their phone. And they deteriorated because the air quality got worse. So we just mapped it onto into a usual a weather app, used AI, and now as the deterioration got worse of air pollution, people's lung function deteriorated. And we measured it in their own homes again and again, and it was changing. When the heat wave happened in the summer, all these people's breathlessness scores went off the roof. And so we can now plot this for the first time. And these are not people with asthma. These are elderly people with chronic, irreversible lung disease. But it is reversing. It's changing. It's changing with the weather, with the pollution, with pollen counts. So I'm learning about this condition. I'll see more about it and I only see them for 10 minutes once a year in my clinic. But I suddenly get this amazing rich data. And I understand COPD more now than I did 2 years ago. This was a lady who was definitely diagnosed as severe COPD. So we gave her tests, blow-in tests in clinic. We gave her steroids, and she didn't get better. So we said, it's not asthma, it's called COPD. It's irreversible. And the lung function is at the top. And then she started doing it at home. And see where the top red square is? I don't know if there's a laser pointer here. Nope. This square, that first square. So she did the blow-in test on her own, relaxed in the afternoon without looking for car parking spaces, and the lung function kept getting better in the afternoon. I thought, why is it getting better in the afternoon if it's so-called irreversible progressive? And it's because my clinics have always been done in the morning, and people with asthma get tight-chested in the mornings. And for 20 years, I and other people like me have labeled her as COPD. She's a 50-pack-year smoker. She had irreversible lung disease, bad quality of lung spirometry. But in the house, it's getting better. So we changed her treatments to asthma. And that small red square, it doubled. The lung function doubled in about a week. And she said, it's the best I've ever felt, Professor Lewis. So I got it wrong. And she had all the criteria for COPD in every textbook. I went back, have I made a mistake? And then she got worse again towards the end when the air quality changed. And this was true reversible asthma. And we picked this person up, and she was about to be referred for lung transplant, costing £1 million. So we changed the diagnosis and changed the quality of life. So what I've learned again is individual projects you don't learn from, but a series of projects over 20 years, you start to learn themes. And so you build an ecosystem, so we can say, let's test lots of technology and build an institute, something like TriTech, something like RIW, where you can check different tests. And different companies will come to us now saying, can we test our equipment in your setting? Can we do this? Yes. So we've got NuvaWare and another company called Tunstall. 2 different models, one on the right, one on the left. And I know Gareth's in the audience, so he's going to shoot me down if I get these things wrong. So Gareth Davis did 99% of the work on Tunstall. The process, one was onboarded by the company themselves. The other model, well, you give it to Delta Wellbeing and Carmarthenshire Council, and you get hold of the patients, not us. Process on the left, we met every 2 weeks. Process on the right, no feedback whatsoever. And again, thinking about feedback, when patients do a monitor and they like feedback, like when you, how many times have you done a questionnaire online and then heard nothing? And then they send you another questionnaire, I'm not doing that again. It's the same. They send in all these sats and monitors and we go, well done to you. The company said, you've done well today, this is good for you. And it's all automatic, but I feel really good. And okay, I'll keep doing it then. And you will just keep monitoring the system, and the system will learn. The other model, one used a phone, one used a tablet, and they bought tablets for all people, or they convinced the health board to buy tablets for everybody. And that's quite a lot of money. And people don't like extra kit. They like simple things that they carry every day, a phone. Finally, we actually showed a reduction in nurse visits. We got 1 year data coming up in December, but at 4 months there was definite, and the cost is different. So that's where we are now. And technology is getting better and better and better by the day. And all we have to do is build ecosystems within the NHS where we can test it rapidly and feedback rapidly and test again. So there's literally one ring to rule them all and one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all in the darkness bind them. Yeah? That's the one ring. You wear a ring and it measures your oxygen levels, your pulse, your body temperature, and you don't even know it's on if you want to choose to wear it. Now that comes a long way from a docubo clunky thing we have to connect to an Ethernet into the TV socket. So technology is not the problem. We're looking at some wearables now. So whether you put a monitor in your glasses that someone like ATiC are looking at, and you can actually scan people's eye movements to see if they've got early dementia, because the eye movements become more erratic as you can't remember things. That kind of technology is here. Wearables, vests. How many of you got an iWatch that's monitoring you right now? I mean, you can do it, yeah. So it does work. A lot of people are presenting. I've got atrial fibrillation, Professor Lewis. Have you? I've got sleep apnea. Have you? Show me, and they show you the data. It's great. So they're wearables. You don't even know it's been worn. There's some things where we can actually measure movement of the chest. And there's a place in Bristol where they've got infrared cameras and movement sensors that can actually measure your respiratory rate just by video recordings day and night. You don't even know it's doing it. Now that sounds big brother, doesn't it? But respiratory rate is one of the things that people like me are interested in. And then there's another next technology. The future is here now where you can implant things into you. And that's getting scary. So you can actually, I know myself and Chris are supervising a PhD student in Swansea who's trying to develop a patch to measure intradermal pH and carbon dioxide in your skin. You can't measure it on a probe for your finger, but can you measure it in the skin? Like a sticky patch, like an elastoplast. And that can be connected to your phone within the next 5-10 years. So these kind of things are coming. It's not the technology. So if you're going to build an ecosystem, you need to have a location. I personally think it needs to be cloud-based. Please don't go near your IT systems in the hospitals and IG governance. It's just easier. But the other reason I like it to go cloud-based is because it becomes patient-centric. The data's not owned by Howell Dda. That patient can move to Swansea. That patient can move to Galicia. She might end up in a nursing home in Germany. The data will be there all the time. And the systems can connect to the data. Now, why can't we think like that instead of it has to be in Howell Dda? It also allows machine learning. And when you've got enough data, like background pollen, your respiratory rate, your age, how many times you've been admitted to hospital, the more you do it, AI and machine learning can build, so it goes from just monitoring to prediction. And it'll predict for Keir Lewis and only Keir Lewis, not the average patient. So it'll learn from you and it'll give you a personalized prediction model. If you've got enough data, the more data you give it, the better it predicts. And AI is, we're starting AI on some other programs at the moment. And again, going back to the location, if there's things called electronic health records, EHRs, you can map it onto any electronic health record anywhere in the world. So that data has to go outside just the NHS. Just has to have the right governance to be able to access it, and the patients can sign a form to say, yes, people can use it on my behalf if I give them my code. The thing I've also learned is funding. Small little projects come and go. Wales does suffer from pilotitis more than most countries. We do it, we don't learn, and we don't cascade it, and then we start again, and someone else in North Wales might think that's a good idea, whereas someone else in Howell Dda is already cocked up on it. Why don't we just go for infrastructure? We go for longer term funding and learn, and it's an ecosystem. You fund the system or the person, not projects. And I think we are starting to have that kind of arguments and discussion. For tech, any tech, that's the way forward. It's not drug trials. So painful nuggets that I have learned in the last, just for telemonitoring. So that one, patients, pick people who use healthcare, but they're motivated. Hospital avoidance is probably better than assisted discharge for various reasons. Once they're in hospital, you're really on the back foot. The idea is to keep them out of hospital in the first place. I think the technology is amazing and it's changing, and I'm trying to keep up with it. Feedback to users, let them know they're being results. Wearables and smartphones are the way forward, not extra bits of clunky kit in the house. People don't like it. And I actually always use techies to onboard. Never, ever ask respiratory nurses to tell people about onboard them onto a trial and technology. The company knows far more about their technology than nurses. Worst thing you do is give it to a respiratory consultant to try and onboard people. We know from the Tunstall project, you're giving it to primary care, and there's so much pressure at the moment. We just couldn't get people to, didn't we, Gav? I was blackmailing GPs, bribing GPs. I was having kind of dodgy photos, his phone calls, please do it. And they struggle to engage, not because they're lazy people, because they were swamped with so many other things. So let the company, let a designated team like TriTech or someone else on board, and just let the clinical teams do the clinical bit and nothing more. And the infrastructure, again, think about ecosystems. And the way I'm thinking about it now is if you're going to base business plans and business models, I'm going away from the fabled bed days. Our finance director says, how many bed days are you going to save me this year, Keir, with your projects? Now, bed days don't exist, and they only if you look at bed days, the hospitals are going to be full whatever we do. They will be full. You can't say I'm saving bed days anymore because they're gone for other reasons. And it only started with Thatcher in the 80s and the GP fund holders what bed days meant. Before then, no one actually cared and used it. What I'm using it for now is technology to help efficiency. Can you make staff work better? We know a mobile phone can help a district nurse work better, as opposed to going back and dialing in on a public phone box. Do you really need a randomized control trial to prove that? Or can you just get staff feedback and show that you're driving less miles and saving the environment? And that kind of real-world evaluation, looking at staff efficiency, I think we're missing the trick here with technology. And it could be technology across any disease. Staff efficiency is really important at the moment, and staff well-being in the NHS. So in TriTech, we look at patient outcomes, infrastructure, but we look at staff outcomes. Will that nurse stay more than a day? Are they off sick all the time? Can we stop them being off sick? So thank you very much. That's some personal nuggets on a personal story, just using technology and telemedicine. But I think some of the themes can be adapted to any tech at scale. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Keir. Yep.
Any questions? Okay, so as I'm listening, Leighton's watching. So as an ex-R&D director in the NHS, you learn certain tricks. And one of them is, so for example, in TriTech, we will have an adoption form and we'll ask them 4 or 5 questions up front. And if they answer the wrong question, we say, no, you have to answer this question. So I like now doing service evaluations. And it can be a subtle difference. What's a service evaluation? What's a research trial? And there's about 3 or 4 definitions you can apply, just screening questions. So with technology, it's just little things for people in the audience. If it's got a CE mark or equivalent, if there's no randomization, so you can do before and after, not randomized, what's the third one? If the technology is being used for the process it's designed for, so you can't use it for something it's not got registered for, then nearly always you can do a service evaluation. And a lot of companies have got kit that already is been built. You know, the cobots are a great example. They've got everything. They've got the ISO markings. They've got the CE markings. They just want to test it in the real world. And that's where the gap is. A lot of these companies just come and go within 6 months. They need the data really quick. So time is money. You haven't got time to go through an ethics committee and answer the same questions the company's already done. They want to say, can I work in the real world in the NHS? Is it cost effective? Is it got value? So we've got people who can answer those questions. And they're far more interesting, I find. So we bypass ethics as far as possible, legally possible, but don't tell Leighton I said that. Service evaluation, look up that. It's not an audit, it's a service evaluation. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Keir.
Summed up really well. I think time is the big issue, like you say, for primary care, for staff. So, in the integration of them, so if it's a separate system, it's a really big issue.
Sorry. Bit late.
So, yeah, he said time and integrating it into the system. Just like if you're going to go cloud, rather than create a new artificial IT system, it's going to be cheaper. And there's ways of making sure that's secure.
Okay, thank you, Keir. Always inspiring and motivational. And we've got a coffee break now, so we can carry on the conversation and then restart in about 15 minutes, if that's okay with you. Thanks. Hi, everybody. We're going to start the final session in a moment, so if you can bring your coffee back to your chairs and settle down. Oh, I sound like a school teacher then, sorry. The final session is going to be a team effort by colleagues from Digital Health and Care Wales, and it's going to revolve around, well, digital technology and data, but particularly big data. So I'll leave them to introduce themselves. But I think, Rachel, you're going to start, aren't you, Rachel? So we'll start with our wonderful colleague, Rachel Jemin, and then we'll go from there. So I think that's everybody now. Ready to go? So you can use the clicker, or I find that more easy.
Thanks, Sean. Hi all. Thank you for staying with us to the end of the day. So hopefully we're going to keep you engaged and help you understand a bit more about the work that we do in Digital Health and Care Wales. So I'll just go through the different speakers. We'll introduce ourselves as we get to it. So I'm Rachel Jemin, Head of Research and Innovation, and I joined Digital Health and Care Wales back in January this year. And this was off the back of a development of the research innovation strategy that we launched. And I'm going to talk to you about that a bit in a minute. But first of all, I'm going to talk to you about Digital Health and Care Wales and some of the work that we do. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the organisation. You probably will have heard the name, but if you're anything like me before I joined, I didn't really understand what they did, what they were doing, what was happening. So Digital Health and Care Wales was set up in April 2021 as a special health authority. So we're part of NHS Wales, and we're really there to help support the digital and data services within NHS Wales. So we are used across the health boards by the NHS staff, and the technology that we're developing is there to help to make a difference to the services, so the way that services are run and the care of the patients. So we have developed different products and services and networks to help support care, and also to help link it so that we can look to how to better support people. We're a growing organisation, so in the last couple of years we've been expanding our workforce, our skills mix, and the services that we offer. And we're really hoping to work towards effectively supporting our different partners in transforming care. So we have several values that are integral to what we do, and these are really important, particularly today, looking at collaboration, so how we work together, innovation, so the differences and the changes that we can make, inclusion, so that we are making sure that we're including everyone, excellence, so having that impact in the work that we do, and also compassion. So some of the different things that we do really support the frontline staff. So looking at how we can modernise the systems. So we heard from Keir earlier about how the digital ecosystem in healthcare needs to be updated. So this is some of the work that we are doing, so that we can really give clinicians that information about patients, and so they can have it available where they are and where they need it. We're delivering new digital solutions to support care, and this is for cancer patients, to help nurses, to modernise their critical care units, to update our hospital pharmacies, to work in the community with prescribers, and also to support patients to have better access to their own records. So as most of you will know, we've got the NHS or Wales Patient app that is now in public beta testing. We also use data to provide insights and look to how to improve the health and care services. So Gareth's going to talk to you a bit more later about the data that we hold and the work that we do with it. But by using this data and these insights, we can really help to transform care. We want to help patients to manage their own health and recovery. So we've heard about telemedicine, we've heard about the different changes, but actually we need to give people access to their own digital health records. And we need to make sure that these apps and these different things that we've got happening in different health boards are actually linked together and working together. We know that cybercrime is an issue. We've got a dedicated team that is looking after this and trying to keep our records safe. And we also work to several digital standards to make sure that we can have faster development of different digital services. And importantly, we need to protect our data assets. So we need to make sure that our data is safe and secure through adopting a cloud-first policy. So within the organisation, we have 5 strategic missions, and I'm not going to go through all of them today, but specifically I want to talk to you about Mission 4, which is driving better value and outcomes through innovation. So as a learning organisation, we want to lead and enable high-quality health and care through world-leading data and digital research and innovation. So it's quite a bold statement. It's also quite a long statement, but really what we want to do is to use the data to improve outcomes. So we want to release that value from the data to advance research and innovation and improve our patient outcomes and support NHS services. So there's lots of innovative projects that are happening within Digital Health and Care Wales. I've mentioned the app. We've also got the All Wales maternity records that we're digitalising, and there's many, many more. So if you have a look on our website, you'll see a whole portfolio of the different work that we do, and I'm happy to talk to anyone or signpost them if they want to pick up on any of those areas. But what obviously my area is research and innovation. And when we launched the research innovation strategy back last October, we had 4 clear strategic aims that we're looking to deliver on. So our first one is really looking at the assets and resources to support research and innovation across Wales. So in practice, what does this mean? So how can we as an organisation help support you in undertaking research and innovation? So one of the ways we're doing this is through better access to data. So Jen's going to talk to you a bit about the secure data environment and the ways that we can enable access to this. We're also looking around the infrastructure in terms of clinical trials, so looking at developing find, recruit and follow-up service so that we can better identify patients who are eligible for clinical trials, invite them to participate, and then support the data collection in order to follow up. And the hope is that this will improve recruitment into trials, but also retention into those trials, so that the data that's coming out of them can have a real impact. We want to focus on our quality and impact. We want to make sure that the work that we're doing is really important. So we have spent quite a lot of time setting up a governance structure within house so that we can actually make sure that the work we're doing is meeting the needs and the priorities of our partners and of the public. We want to be in a position that we can say yes to partnerships. We want to work more closely with people. And today is a great example. We've done quite a lot of work with ATiC and with University of Wales, Trinity St David's over the last few years, particularly focusing on our collaboration with WIDI. So I'll come on to that shortly. But the other area that I really want to mention is culture. So we are looking at how we can better upskill our staff so that they are motivated and willing and want to be involved in innovation and research projects. So we're looking at what training we can provide. So again, working with WIDI, we're looking at some of the innovation modules that we can produce that can support training, not just within DHCW, but in the wider NHS. We're also linking into the business change programme. So I don't know if any of you are aware, this is a great programme that looks around the leadership within healthcare and how we can motivate and help people to make a change. So the partnerships and networks are really important. It links back to our core mission and it links back to our values. And as you can see, we are partners with a lot of different organisations. This is not an exclusive list, there are others. But particularly important is our WIDI partnership. So this is the Wales Institute of Digital Information. And this partnership is with Trinity and University of South Wales. And we're focusing on 3 main areas, which is looking at teaching, how we can support the training that we're offering within the NHS and also to people who in the future may look to come and work within the NHS. What are the skills gaps? What are the move in technology that we need to address? Looking at workforce and organisational development, so looking at that talent pipeline. and also looking at research and innovation projects, so how we can work with each other and collaborate to undertake different projects. SAIL was mentioned earlier. We are a trusted provider of SAIL, so a lot of the data that they have flows through Digital Health and Care Wales. So Gareth helped with the anonymisation algorithm, so he developed those. And so we are a trusted provider of that information, so we work really closely with SAIL and a lot of our projects as well, and I'm sure Jen will pick up on some of that work. We work closely with all of the universities, and we also are part of the life science ecosystem, working very closely with Health and Care Research Wales, Life Sciences Hub, Medi Wales, etc. And this is really important because actually it means that we'll have a bigger impact if we're working together. So it's really easy for me to talk and say, these are our vision, these are our missions, but actually it doesn't really give you an idea of what we're actually doing. So I just wanted to give you a brief overview of a project that we ran called ID8. And this was a really collaborative project which was run with Welsh Health Boards, Swansea University, the Value in Health Unit, Health Analytics UK and Pfizer, who actually funded the study, to create a health event linkage using outcome-based agreements. So we were looking at people with breast cancer and looking at metastatic disease to understand which of the medications would actually be able to show within an outcomes-based approach. So could we then use value-based procurement models moving forward in order to actually look at patients who have gone through this and move towards that model of care? And we know that sort of following this pathway, that outcome-based agreements have the potential to align incentives of the companies, so the people who are providing the medication, and those who are actually using it in the therapeutics, and also for patients and populations, so we're able to look at ensuring there are better outcomes and improving those outcomes and experiences for patients. So this was really a proof of concept study to really understand how we could collect that data, how we could use that data, and then how we could link it into sort of financial flow mapping. So bringing together all the partners, it was looking how we can take that research innovation project and actually make a difference and move it through that transition and come up with something that could have an impact and could be used to transform services and delivery. So my message really today is there's lots of opportunities and lots of things that we're doing, and we really want to work with people, we really want to get involved, and we really want to be able to drive better value through outcomes, through using innovation and using the data. So our ultimate aim is really all about the patients and about the services and how can we break down those barriers to show better outcomes. So I'm going to hand you over to Jen, who is going to talk to you a bit about the secure data environment.
Thanks, Rachel. So hi, my name is Jen. I work in the National Data Resource as a senior product specialist, and I'll just set the scene slightly. So the National Data Resource is a very large programme of work that's currently being undertaken across NHS Wales, although I admit there are a large portion of us that are DHCW employees. And the core NDR is looking at implementing sort of a national database within the cloud, which is very exciting, and Gareth will touch on that slightly in his slides. But there's a smaller team within that program called Advanced Analytics, which is where I sit. And we're looking to enable analytics, particularly advanced analytics, across NHS Wales and with partners across 3 work streams. So there's the capability work stream, an innovation work stream, and then tools, which is where the SDE sits. So I guess the question is, what is an SDE? So an SDE is, or what we're looking to implement, is a secure platform where we can do collaborative data work. So that's between both NHS, so health and social care, but also academia and industry. We're currently we've just moved off a pilot phase, so we're in a service in transition phase, with the ultimate aim being a live service on the NHS catalogue. But we are delivering a service right now, so there are people in it today emailing me problems, which is good fun. So I guess the question is, why would you want to use an SDE? What's the benefit? So when I first started working with the NHS, in particular with Gareth, I was a contractor and I got given a laptop. So you have to go into Cardiff, you get given sometimes more than one laptop, you've got to cart them around. There's obviously a cost associated with that for the NHS for providing that kit, time for the team to set me up and give me access to the right areas and the right data and the right software. What the SDE does is it removes a large amount of that burden. So instead of having to have a laptop, you can log into our platform from any computer, as long as you've got an internet connection. And that platform will then host all the data you need for your project or your piece of work, as well as the software tools that you would need to undertake your work. It also has sort of the high standards of privacy and security, and we do have a governance wrap around it where we help people work through the governance, which can be a stumbling block for a lot of projects. The current tool that we're hosting our secure data environment on is called SERP, so the Secure E-Research Platform. And anyone that's used SAIL, I know SAIL have been mentioned quite a few times, it's the same tool that they use and they provide it to us to host our SDE on. And then the wrap we provide our side is, we do, as I said, that governance support. So we'll support projects on getting their DPIAs signed off, so that's a data privacy impact assessment, but also checking that there's the right data sharing agreements or contracts in place. We'll also prepare the data. We might have to acquire it depending on the project, or we might get it from DHCW. Provide any linkage, put it in the platform, and make sure it's ready for the users. We also have quite a comprehensive suite of user guides, if I say so myself. So there's lots of videos, and we provide live support, so they can email us. Oops, did I do that? They can email us problems while they're in the platform, and we'll work through issues on screen. Just an example of the types of projects we support. So we've done a large amount of training events and hackathons. For example, right now we're supporting a learning program with finance analysts within the NHS, so upskilling them on some more modern techniques with data. We also do hackathons regularly with the Bosch Modelling Collaborative, where we support challenges for their participants within the SDE. Additionally, Rachel touched on Ideate, so that was undertaken in the SDE, so with a commercial organisation. And then we're looking at projects with sort of NHS project teams and academia, and quite often collaborating. Right now we're in the governance stages of some projects around natural language processing with Swansea Uni and Swansea Health Board, on how we can get information out of things like epilepsy clinic letters or radiology reports to help clinicians and researchers. As I said, we are a live service, so any project that thinks they can benefit from using the SDE is more than welcome to get in touch with us, and we can talk through if it's of use to you. There's an email address on screen. I'm not sure if the slides are going to be shared. And that's everything from me. I'll hand over to Gareth unless there's any questions.
Yes, I'm Gareth John. I head up the information delivery team within DHCW. And then just a segue really there, I think what I'm going to talk about is NHS data. The idea with the SD is it's an environment to collaborate. We obviously have our own internal NHS environments which we'll use on a daily basis. Whether there might be circumstances due to tooling or capacity, we might choose ourselves to use the SD, but it's mainly to actually allow NHS, non-NHS to collaborate, come in. And there's lots of examples which we'll cover, which might sort of, we will need that support really. So my team include a team who acquire, process, basically transform NHS data into a format that analysts can use within the DHCW's National Data Warehouse. We make those data products available to information specialists, analysts, all parts of NHS Wales and sometimes beyond. Again, we are a provider of data to SAIL, and we do work with other academic partners. So I've also got a team of analysts who produce national reports and dashboards and carry out a range of analyses for a number of different stakeholders, clinicians, etc. So first I'm going to talk about the NHS Wales data that we have within our data warehouse, and then I'm going to talk about some collaborative work we've done with clinical colleagues. We started out as a data hackathon. You can see on the pack we've said DHCW Data Hackathon. We're not going to actually do a hackathon today, but we're going to introduce the concept. So I think, in these events, we tend to focus on flashy things such as interactive dashboards and, predictive tools, and that's good, they're all, but you can't do that with any data, without any data. And I think we sometimes underestimate the time, effort and skill required to create a nice curated store of data. And I think, so what we tend to see is just the tip of the iceberg often. You know, we see the analyses, reports and flashy dashboards, but below the surface, actually majority of work needs to take place. So there's data storage, information governance, security, and then transforming that data so it's in a sort of form that's amenable to analysis, machine learning, etc. And I think, you know, some of the value we need to add within our own data warehouse is, you know, the checking completeness of data, reporting that completeness back to users, removing duplicates, reporting errors back to providers of data such as health boards. We do try and improve the completeness and validity where we can. So, for example, if there are missing NHS numbers, NHS is obviously a key part of facilitating linkage, individual level linkage within a data environment. We're able to trace that against some of our patient registers. If information is provided in the wrong format, maybe outside of the sort of given agreed information standards, we can reformat some of that. And I said linkage is a key component of what we do and the environment we provide. So person level, again, it's facilitated using just basically NHS numbers. But we also do event level, pathway level linkage becoming more of a thing now where we want to just link related events. So there's some algorithms that we've developed, for example, linking ambulance data into associated ED attendances. And there's a lot more of that happening as a growing area. And yet again, we're working with SAIL colleagues because that's another different challenge in the way a SAIL receives data. It receives ready anonymized data, so sometimes their ability to do that event level is slightly compromised. So we're looking at methods, you know, how we're going to enable that in the future. We also supplement raw data. So a lot of the raw data we receive is very much codified, administrative, internal system codes, clinic codes. So we try to supplement within the warehouse with meaningful text, groupings, natural hierarchies of that data. And there's lots of other analytical, useful stuff we do, such as comorbidity indexes. We add those on healthcare resource groups, which are used for finance, and other sort of statistical measures. So there's a lot more added, and every analytical project comes along, we're sort of building, if we think actually this is a reusable, derived information, we got that, it's built into the warehouse, it can be used for the next project. So it's always growing. And in fact, we work closely with our IG team, information governance team, make sure everything's legal and proper, people have the appropriate level of access, and then sort of pseudonymization is a big part of that. So probably for 99% of cases, the analysts don't need to know who the individuals are, but they need to still link those records together from different sources. And pseudonymization facilitates that. And again, that's part of what we do for SAIL. So this is just an example of some of the key data sets we've got with some of the volumes. So some of these, for example, admitted patient care, child health and Welsh Demographic Service, we've got around 30 years worth of data. So, you know, pretty impressive historical record. Only we have that. The health boards would have archived off a lot of this information. And then there's also some very large data sets. So the Welsh Results Reporting Service contains requests, results data from a number of different departments, such as radiology, microbiology, and blood sciences. So very large volumes. There's 2.4 billion results within the WRRS, and obviously growing very quickly. There are some notable gaps. Again, there's some data sets I haven't shown on the slide just for space, but probably the main notable gap we've got is GP, individual level GP data. So we still, within Wales, very much rely on the SAIL data bank. So the NHS itself doesn't have that linked data, GP level. So SAIL is a big part of that, but something that we are working on. And as Jen said, there's the ongoing National Data Resource Programme, or NDR programme, which is hoping to address some of these gaps. And I think that will really result, the NDR will result in a sort of increase in volume, a variety of health and care data, which is available to users within NHS primarily, but obviously other people will benefit downstream. And also improve the range of analytical tools, as Jen has explained. And the NDR will be hosted on the Google Cloud platform, which brings with it opportunities and challenges. It'll bring with a range of different data types, far more than we're used to. We're used to very much SQL Server, you know, nice simple tables, columns. Whereas I think, you know, we might have image data, other different data types, a lot of unstructured data like free text. Now, But there's actually opportunities in that as well with the free text. I think Jen has explained there's a couple of projects we're working with the SDE around clinic letters and radiology. We're trying to extract analytically useful information from those. I think that's going to be a sort of one of the big objectives for us to expand our data offering. We want to make radiology reports, clinic letters, more analytically useful. So NLP is a big area. There are some off-the-shelf tools in Google, but also we want to work with partners who've got experience in this area just to accelerate things on our side. So that's the summary of the data. Next, I did say I was going to showcase a collaborative project we've done with some specialist palliative care colleagues. So this explains our sort of journey from an initial data hackathon all the way through to the launch of a national end-of-life dashboard. So it's a joint presentation with Anthony Byrne. Anthony's a palliative care consultant within Cardiff and Vale. He's not with us today, but he's recorded a few clips. So Anthony's going to start off and introduce the hackathon event. This was back in May 2022. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Anthony Byrne, a palliative care consultant in Cardiff and the Vale University Health Board, and I'm delighted to share my experience of working with the team at Digital Healthcare Wales and the collaborative journey that we've been on towards the development of a population dashboard for the last year of life. This project actually started as a hackathon supported by the Welsh Modelling Collaborative back in May of 2022. And I was fortunate enough to be invited along as a problem owner, along with my colleague, Dr. Idris Baker, who is the National Clinical Lead for Palliative and End-of-Life Care in Wales. And at this virtual event, we were given the opportunity to interact with analytical and information specialist colleagues from DHCW. And the reason for doing that was we wanted to explore opportunities to better understand what was happening to the palliative care population, particularly their needs in the last year of life. And this has been a long-held ambition for specialist palliative care community in particular, because we had very little understanding of what was happening to our patients in that last year of life and the sorts of interactions that they were having with different services and the systems of care that were wrapped around them. But we'd really struggled to put together data about the type of care being received by individuals, and particularly the types of services and organisational interactions that were happening, and particularly from outside the specialist palliative care field, so that we were getting an understanding of the population as a whole and not just those that were known to specialist palliative care teams. And given those difficulties, I guess it's not a surprise that we went into the hackathon not overly optimistic about the types of data that might be available. And so our sense of expectation really wasn't very high at that point. But what was clear to us from the outset was that the analysts and the information specialists had already done a huge amount of work. They'd done some background digging into the data sets that might be available based on the problem that we presented to them ahead of the meeting.
And so that some of the ideas we showed Anthony and Idris were basically recycled, a lot of them, from previous work we've done in unscheduled care. And it was a case, so there was analyses, visuals we had, and it was just a case of just tailoring them to basically the sort of palliative care end-of-life context. And that was quite useful because it was quite difficult. It was a virtual event. Otherwise, blank bit of paper would have been quite difficult to get discussions going. But this was, at least they had something, which it was engaging, they had something to see, comment on, and we could discuss, and they could see the breadth of data that was available and how we could potentially be used. And this encouraged them to come forward with some of their own ideas. It meant that within a very short period of time, we would be able to broadly agree what the objectives would to be for this two-day event. It meant the information specialists could go away, do the analytical and development work, and the clinicians, if they wanted, could go back to their clinical work, and there'd be sort of various check-in times during the day, the 2 days. And so the challenge we set ourselves was to create a cohort of individuals who had died in the year 2021. And the idea then was to bring together all information we had within our data warehouse as much as for those individuals in their last year of life. And the focus very much on unscheduled care interactions. And then we want to analyse and visualise that data in a way that was understandable and engaging to the users. And so, again, this is all based on data we already had within our data warehouse, which included the Office for National Statistics registered deaths data, and that was used to generate our cohort of nearly 34,000 individuals. And then, obviously, we wanted to capture the healthcare interactions for this cohort. So we used a wide range of data sources from our data warehouse, some of those hospitals, some of them pre-hospital. We also have specialist palliative care contacts, and also data from our National Patient Register, which is the Welsh Demographic Service. The tool we used to visualise was Power BI, and that ticked a lot of boxes because we already exist in skills within the team. There would exist in templates, as I said, visuals that we'd used. It provided the necessary degree of interactivity for the users so they could filter and look at different conditions and drill into different age groups, etc. And we were already licensed to publish these dashboards. So that ticked the box. And then one of the first things we showed, and one of the first templates we showed was what we call our patient on a page. Now, in this case, each row here is an individual. Obviously, we've given these people a random number, but that is an individual. And it shows all the sort of interactions they've had with services in their last year of life. Up to the date of death is shown in as the red bar there. So the different colours represent contacts with different services. So you can see you're going across the top. You've got 111, GPS of hours, WASP is the ambulance service, nursing department, admission, admitted patient care, specialist palliative care, and obviously got the death date here. And using this, it was quite a good way of engaging the customers. They didn't really worry about any statistics or numbers here. This just showed, this was like dynamite to Anthony and Idris because they'd never seen their patients in this context. They knew were patients that they directly treated in their specialist palliative care context. But there's a lot of people who, in their last year of life, don't even touch palliative care services, and then also they didn't know about these unscheduled care contacts around. So that was really useful, really engaging, and it was a good way of eliciting further questions from the problem owners. So, for example, they wanted to know how many days during the last year of life did these individuals spend in either an ambulance or a hospital. And we could see from this that the intensity of use increased as you got nearer to the date of death. That wasn't unexpected anecdotally, but what was quite useful, we were able to sort of contextualise this in terms of some numbers. So we compared to a control group of a similar age, similar sex, and we discovered our cohort sort of spent 12 times as many days in a hospital ambulance than a comparable group, and 25 times as many days in the last 3 months. So those are numbers that actually Anthony and Idris could take away, compare, how does that compare health board by health board, track that over time. Is that good or bad? You know, that's up to them. But they've got a number now they can actually build into any business cases, whereas previously it was more anecdotal. And I think then, from ourselves, our reflection of the hackathon is that we were pleased what we were able to achieve within 2 days, just 2 days. Lots of engagement and enthusiasm for both information and the clinical side. And what was great, and thanks to Anthony and Idris, is we felt we were equal partners in the process, creative process. It wasn't just sometimes a clinician can lead the discussions. It was very much a meeting of minds, us bringing our strengths, clinicians bringing their strengths and their knowledge and context of the service. So we think it was quite a nice template for how to successfully collaborate and bring in information together with healthcare decision makers, really. But don't take my word for it. And here's what Anthony thought about it.
Presented in a way that we
And so with the support of the Value and Health Centre, we were able to actually put this work on a more formal operational footing. And we actually held a dashboard launch. So from May 2022 with the hackathon to February 2023, we'd actually done the development to actually launch this into a fully fledged national dashboard published. There was approximately 50 people on the launch course, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of interest in people, and saying, well, actually, we would like to use this in this context, different stakeholders, etc. So a really nice success story. And I think it's a good template. So I think, when Sean asked us today, he said, well, actually, could we run a hackathon, or at least could we get some ideas together for a future ATiC hackathon? Now, I think with the registration went out, I think ideas were asked for, but I don't think we had much in. And maybe that's because people were coming quite cold to it. But now you've got a bit of an idea of how it sort of works and what the expectation. And I think those links are really important, that you're linking in with decision makers, and then you understand what you're doing is important and potentially is going to have an impact. So I think we're going to do it a little bit different way. We've got Rachel's going to do a Mentimeter, so it's going to be a bit interactive. Well, interactive, you have to type on your phone, as interactive as that is, if it works. So we're going to try this, and we'll probably finish a little bit early today, because it's, will we? No, it's not that early. We'll see. So, yeah, thanks.
We'll try and see if it will work. Okay, so I think what Gareth has shown you is a real example of the work that we're doing and actually how that can translate into having clinical benefits. So what we really want to know from you is actually what can we do to help you work with us? What kind of questions have you got that we could use, that the data could answer? And now there's sort of a better understanding, hopefully, of what data we hold. How is that going to make a difference? So if people are able to use the code, I don't think I can show you the results on the screen, but we can go through them. You're welcome to come down so that you're closer to take a picture. Yes, 8899 2650. Well, I'm not singing a song, Gareth. If you want to come and sing, you're more than welcome. Otherwise, everyone will be leaving and not filling out the Mentimeter. Okay, so I can see some of you are in. The code again is 88992650. So hopefully the first question that you'll see is, do you want to use data? This is good. I can see what the results are. It's going well, because this could have gone really badly if everyone said, no, we've got no interest. Please just let us go home. So the majority is obviously, yes, we want to use data. That's a great start. We want to have people who are interested. We want people who are engaged, and we want to be able to provide that data and the resources to use it. And I think what the really good thing that Jen and Gareth both touched on is the governance side, that we really do provide that wraparound support. So being able to sort of get those permissions in place for you. So we're used to doing that on a routine basis. We've got a dedicated team, and actually we can help overcome the obstacles. So yes, the majority said, obviously we had one who said, I could be persuaded. So if you get in touch, we will persuade you, and then we'll be able to help you to use that data. Okay, so the next question, what could we do to help you work with DHCW? So what can we do differently that is going to make you want to come and work with us? And it could be anything, like telling you how you could actually get in touch with us is probably a good starting point. We've mentioned the information governance. We've got the data, we've got the platforms to be able to use it, but how can we get you to want to come and work with us? So how-to guides, easy access. So we have got some how-to guides and videos with the secure data environment. We've also got some clear processes. So with the data request service that we run, if you wanted to have access to data, but you wanted somebody to help support that analytics and give you sort of the feedback on that, then that is something that we provide as well, so we can share those links to services with you. For example, we're doing a project now with Blood Cancer UK, so we're working very closely with SAIL to deliver on that, and so we're putting the governance in place, getting the data together, and then once we've got that information, we're working with Oxford University to then develop a dashboard to present that. Biscuits, good one. Yes, we can provide biscuits at meetings as long as they're in person. One of the things somebody put is why not SAIL? So we work very, very closely with SAIL. We're not here to try to replace them, but what we're looking at is really more around that transformation and actually how can we help support changes in clinical care? So how can we help with that innovation side? SAIL are very much focused on the sort of more initial research, so we're looking about more transformation, and actually what we want to do is be able to use the data to create these dashboards which can then go live and can be used, so rather than looking to build something that is purely for research. Clear offerings, you're right, we need a clear front door, and it is something that we're working on, so it's very clear to what we're doing, what we're offering, and how you can get in touch. Workshops is another great one, and with the NDR, there's a lot of different events. So the big data event was run back in March, I think, and there's some follow-up events that are being planned where we can look more on a practical level of the different offerings that we can do. So we'll take all of this feedback back, and we were going to make a plan for how we address it, and we'll feed that back to you, because you're right, you know, you need to have the feedback of what we're going to do, so that we'll come back to you through Sean and say, you know, based on this is the plan. Funding, that is one that has come up, and unfortunately we don't have the funding for it, but we do have the skills and the resources to support it, which can help negate some of the funding requirements, and we can also support those funding applications with our networks and colleagues. Okay, so this is the big one. What we're looking to do is to run a hackathon with ATiC. So we are looking for a question that we can then help work with you to develop, so that we can build a dashboard or run some analytics or do something fun with that data that is going to have an impact. So have you got any questions that you can give to us that we can then take away, and the pressure's not really off you because you've got to work with us, so it's sort of nominating yourself for more work. You should have brought your tuba. You could have played for everyone during the lull. We'll add that onto the recommendations, that when we do these Mentimeters, that we do something to occupy the silence, which isn't just me talking. Yeah. NLP work that we do with is for epilepsy, there's an existing NLP output which they're going to try out on real world data. So it's that simple. Because they can't hold the second last lecture, last one, what they can't, and we can't use it. Yeah, we rely on SAIL for primary care data, analysis and research purposes, but it's something within the NHS. And part of the reason with the pre-test is got potentially got personally identified information with embedded within it, which SAIL can't have. Thanks, yeah. We'll all, just in case. He will keep talking.
Sorry. Yeah, so SAIL's got its place. That's the saying. But there are certain things where, and particularly in that translational stuff, where you want to try out things against real world data.
And it may be that we bring SAIL in as a partner into the question. So we've had a few that have come out. And I don't know if this gives us the names of the people who have suggested them, but we will find a way around that. So some of the ones that we've had is, could we create a disease prevalence map of the health boards in Wales?
That might be a sale one, because they've got the primary care data, yeah. So depending on the disease, if it's a disease serious enough to warrant hospital admission, then we could probably do a proxy nationally. But yeah, we could do something. Depends what it was. Yeah. We've got a cancer register.
We have got, so there are...
There's a unit that does cancer, so we don't need to replicate that.
So there are some dashboards with different diseases which are already in place, which are accessible to people working within the NHS, and some databases and dashboards which are publicly available. Yeah. But yeah, it comes down to the diagnosis and what we can, if we've got that information. Pre-surgical contacts prior to hip and knee replacement related to the surgery. So yes, as long as it's from the point of referral from primary care and looking at secondary care contacts.
We've already got a route in, so under the Value in Health programme, we work with Phil Thomas from Cardiff and Vale, who's a hip surgeon. So there's a hip dashboard, actually, hip and knee dashboard. And it's got some PROM analysis as well in it. So I think it's one of those areas we'd be interested in, getting some other views in and see what else we can do with it. So yeah, that sounds like a good one.
I'm guessing that came from Peter. Have you seen that dashboard, Peter?
Yeah. So yeah, sounds like a good idea.
So that's a good example. If there's something that's already existing, is actually, can we modify, can we build on that and add in the additional questions to it? So we had one the other day around mesothelioma, because our lung cancer dashboard doesn't pull out that data to the depth that they required it. So how could we move that forward? I'm really conscious that it is nearly 5 o'clock and you probably all do want to get home. So I'm going to do one more. Inequalities across Wales. So areas to target for specific interventions where inequalities are present. So yes, that is something that we could potentially look at. There are areas where we wouldn't necessarily have all of the...
Well, it depends what we're looking at, doesn't it? I guess, we've got the ability to geographic profile and sort of from a deprivation point of view profile, all our records. So it depends what we're looking at, what conditions, what services. Yeah, but it sounds feasible.
Brilliant. So what we'll do with the questions that we've had, so we've had 10 questions, and like I said, I'm not sure if it gives us the names, but we will come back to you and ask, and we will arrange an event with ATiC to be able to look at these questions in more detail, and we'll work out the best way so that we can look to see how we can answer these questions, how we can work with you, and then look at what the next steps, if we need any funding, etc. So we will be in touch to arrange that. Is that okay, Sean? Brilliant. Thank you very much. And if you do have any ideas, questions, anything, then our emails are on the slide.
Thank you so much, guys. Perhaps, I know everybody's probably really keen to get off now, but if you did submit a question, you might want to just make yourself known to the team at the front. But we will send out some emails after the event to everybody that's registered, just to kind of let you know what the next steps are going to be regarding the hackathon event. So watch that space. So I think I'd just like to say a few quick thank yous, and then everybody can go home. Thank you to the guys who've been providing the technical support. We had a few challenges yesterday and this morning, but we managed to work our way through it. Thank you to all the speakers who presented. I found it really, really interesting. My mind is buzzing. It might be the caffeine, but the content of the presentations as well. And if one thing that's come across for me today is technology is amazing and it does an awful lot, but I think what's even more important is the people in the room. So a few people have said to me this afternoon, we need to kind of think about the way we develop this event in the future, which is what we're planning to do, to create more opportunities for people to talk. The presentations are really insightful and inspiring, but actually the real meat is in the sandwich, I guess, is in between, when we get the chance to have a chat over a coffee and come together and share ideas. So what we want to do is get your feedback. If you use the QR code again, there's a very quick online form. We didn't include a question about whether you want a jacuzzi next year, but you know, if the feedback suggests that, then we'd be willing to try and get funding for a jacuzzi. Final thank yous are to obviously to the guest speakers, but also to the amazing ATiC team who've helped put this event on, and everybody else who's been involved behind the scenes, catering and the estates team and everything. So I probably missed a lot of people, but thank you very much. I hope you've had a great day, and hopefully we'll see you again this time next year. Cheers. Bye-bye.